Hey, thanks for coming back to the Courageous Parenting Podcast. We are here at the Texas Homeschool Convention, and so if you hear some background noise, that's because people are setting up and getting ready, and some people will be coming in. But today we have a special guest with us, two actually. We have Melanie and Evan Hempe. They are here from Screen Strong, and I'm really excited to introduce you guys to their ministry, their organization. I think it's a ministry because you guys deal with addiction, actually.
Yes.
And so in my mind, anyone who deals with addiction has a ministry.
Yeah.
And what you guys have been creating, because you've got quite a few different things going on, is family changing. It's life changing for these kids who have struggled with addiction to either video games or social media, which are two of the most important topics of today, I believe, for parents. Because when Isaac and I do the Parenting Mentor Program, we're oftentimes working with couples who they're out of alignment on their convictions on so many different things, and they don't realize it till they're in the Parenting Mentor Program. So our goal is to bring them into alignment with each other with God's Word. And you guys are bringing in some wisdom, some science that parents need to know. So
and experience.
That's right, and experience.
Personal.
So Melanie, why don't you just share a little bit about your family, and how this came about, and then maybe you guys can share together about what you have to offer parents.
Right. So I am a nurse by training, and then we have 4 children on top of all that. So my nursing background, when you are a nurse and you're a parent, it's kind of fun because you kind of know some behind the scene things. And one of the things though that I really missed was this idea of a screen addiction, right? So with our oldest son, Adam, his name is Adam, he loved to play video games. And like every boy, I thought, well, little girls like to do ballet and little boys like to play video games. And I just thought this was a normal thing for boys to do. Like if you're a boy, this is what you did. So
anyway, society makes it a normal thing.
And it makes it just such a common thing, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't understand the warning signs of the dependency building and the addiction. And so what happened when he was in middle school, he started with little games. And then around the end of middle school, he started dropping out of all his sports and all of his extracurricular activities. And I thought, he used to love to play outside, and now he just wants to be inside all the time. This is kind of weird, right? And so then in 9th grade, I became the gaming cop mom. I probably became the gaming
AKA
cop mom.
mean mom, right? Because don't you feel like a mean mom when you're saying
cop,
no all the time?
Yes.
Yeah.
And constantly setting the kitchen timer. Adam, get off your game. Adam, come up for dinner. Adam, come to your sister's birthday party that we're having. All the things. And even Christmas, he didn't even want to come up and open Christmas presents. He just wanted to stay in the basement and play video games. And so by 9th grade, that was a turning point for us because we kind of lost the battle in 9th grade because the school gave him a laptop. So once he had a laptop, then he just gamed all the time, right? And he said he was doing homework. And so I didn't know. I just, I have 3 other children. I'm trying to manage everything, and it's really, really hard. And so for parents out there that are listening and that you think that you are doing a terrible job managing, you are, because it's impossible. Yeah. It's like herding cats, all the time. It's really hard. So it got worse and worse. We had a lot of conflict in our home, which is very common when you're dealing with a child who's obsessed with a screen. Yeah. There is a lot of conflict. Fortunately, there was not a lot of conflict between my husband and I because we both agreed we were on the same page, but many times there's conflict between the husband and the wife because one of them thinks it's okay, the other one sees the problem.
And for a lot of moms, the temptation for it to be a babysitter.
For sure. And then when the twins came along, it was like, oh my gosh, Adam's fine. He's playing his game. Like it definitely was a babysitter. And then, but it wasn't really cute and fun anymore by the time he got to high school, and he didn't want to get his driver's license. He didn't want to get a job. He wasn't dating. He wasn't doing like these normal rites of passages that teenage boys should be doing. And I remember talking to my friends about it, and they said, well, Melanie, at least you know that he is safe. He's not doing drugs. He's not drinking. I'm like, wow, is that our bar? Like, is this, the bar seems really low if that's what we're happy about, right? So,
hey guys, I want to just take a brief moment away from this awesome episode to share with you about something that's really important. We are covering this topic because there is an epidemic all over the world today. With the advancement of technology, kids are too easily accessing things like pornography, getting addicted to video games, the toxicity that's in social media, whether it's social media bullying, predators, or even influential agendas put out put forth by people who are anti-biblical. You guys know just as well as I do about the challenges we have with all different kinds of media through technology. Parenting today, it requires a new kind of intentionality than ever before. And so we are talking about a really important topic today, but one thing that I want to share with you guys is that we have partnered with Be Screen Strong, and we are bringing to you guys this awesome Screen Strong Summer Family Bundle, which you can find on the Courageous Parenting website. If you go to courageousparenting.com, you click on podcast and then find today's episode. Go through the show notes and you're going to find an image there with a link that shares about what comes in the Summer Family Bundle. It is 63% off. You're going to get a kids course with the kids workbook, a parents course. You're also going to get an online forum as well as a digital detox mini course. So you get 3 courses plus a forum and a workbook, which is actually really awesome. And it's all 63% off. So go to our website, courageousparenting.com, click on podcast, find today's episode. All right, let's get back to it. This is an awesome interview.
Yeah. Then he went to college. We picked him up. First of all, we were so glad because it was like I knew that Adam was going to start his life and he was going to go to college and he was going to outgrow his gaming habit, which, by the way, that never happens. So he went to a big university. He had 7 AP classes going in. I mean, he was very smart. He had straight A's, which was what sort of I missed because I thought, well, if he had straight A's, then he must be fine. And isn't that how we measure success a lot of times as parents? Like if our kids, if their grades are fine, then they're fine. Well, that's not true, but he was not fine. He went into college and he was very smart. So he figured out, hey, he had to work a little bit that first semester, but by the second semester, he gamed all the time and he did not go to classes. So when we picked him up, he literally, when I was driving him home, he looked like he was on drugs. He was unkept. He had all of these classic addiction signs. And I asked him
Are you on
that
drugs?
question, that every parent hates to think about. And he said, no, Mom, that game did something to me. I've been in bed for a week. I haven't eaten. I haven't bathed. I haven't gone to classes. And he started describing what had happened with this particular game that he was playing. And that's when it all just hit me.
It was a specific game.
Yeah. And it all hit me. And I thought, oh my gosh, all this time we've been dealing with this problem. Like I had no idea you could be addicted to a video game.
Right.
And so I started doing a lot of research with my medical background and I started interviewing neuroscientists and traveling to all these conferences that there literally were conferences about the medical implications of video game addiction. I'm like, what the heck? I didn't even know this.
How come you didn't know about it?
Was a real thing.
Right.
And so I got very immersed in the literature and all, and then came back home and our school had me do an event for the parents because we wanted to see, hey, maybe there's other parents. And I thought maybe we'd have about 20 people and we had about 20 handouts and I had a little slide presentation. We had 125 people show up. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is bigger than I realized. And so at that point, Screen Strong was born and we started hitting the road and I was traveling and I was doing a lot of presentations. And so all of that today we have curriculum now for parents. We have a course for parents that goes through years of research that I did to explain everything that I wish I had known when I was raising a gaming addict. And then on the side story here is once we figured out what's happening with Adam, then my daughter's in middle school and I'm like, you know what, you're gonna have a flip phone. We've already done the first experiment. That didn't work out very well. And we're not gonna experiment on phones, you know, because I knew it was exactly the same thing. Because video games and social media, it's the same area of your brain that gets activated. It's that limbic area of your brain, and it causes these addictions. And so Melissa grew up just fine without a smartphone.
Normal.
She's normal. She actually did really well. And
it's funny to me. I just have to interject. Yeah. It's just funny to me that parents worry that their kids aren't going to be fine because we're fine.
I know.
And we
grew up with that. Yeah.
People for centuries. Like,
exactly.
Why do we have to reinvent the wheel? Like,
yeah.
So, well, how are my kids going to grow up? Well, how did you grow up? How did people for centuries grow up?
Yeah.
So
we always say.
I always find that funny. Yeah.
Yeah. And we say with our younger kids, we're not asking you to do anything that we haven't done.
Yeah, for real.
That's hilarious. Yeah. I love. I'm going to use
that.
Yeah,
you have to
use
use that with your kids, right?
Yeah.
So by this point, I said we have a game-free home.
Yeah.
I am a terrible video game mom, and so we have a game-free home. And guess what? We also have a porn-free home. Yeah. And so we just made these rules, right? And no social media for the kids. And so Andrew and Evan came along. They were boys, right? Twin boys that were the caboose here. And they did not have video games. They did just fine. They
I'm
also
sitting here with Evan,
Yeah.
and he seems pretty fine.
pretty fine.
He's normal.
I don't know about that.
Although
but-
I would say he's above average
Well, there you
in
go.
his ability to communicate. So if you want a child that can do that,
That's right, which is really the most important thing you're
I
trying
try
to
my
do.
best. I really do. I try. But-
So we did this. We did things very, very different. And I will also just to wrap up the Adam story. When he came home, he said, "Mom, I'm dropping out of college." Which we were just devastated because, he was the one kid who we knew would go, right? Because he was very into his grades and all that. So I called the military. I called the Army recruiter. And because I thought there's no way this 19, 18-year-old boy is going to live on my sofa. After you launch, as you know, when you launch your kids, it's time for them to. When your kids are so little, it's so hard to think you'll ever want them to leave the house. But it's very important that they do, and it's very important that they don't come back and try to, become kids again, right?
Yeah.
So he went into the military for 5 years, and we're very proud of him. He did come back and finish at college, and he actually just graduated from law school. So he's done very well. He speaks for us now, and he's very clear about what happened to him, and he says, "Mom, you need to tell as many people as you can.
warn them.
Because
really, I remember when the first Nintendo box was invented,
Oh, yeah.
right? I was in junior high, I think, at the time.
Yeah.
And I had just had foot surgery, so my parents bought one
Of
to
course,
keep me busy
of
because
course.
I was going to be bedridden and on
Yeah.
crutches for weeks and weeks and weeks,
Yeah.
right? And so,
Yeah.
but I remember that even that became an addictive thing as a young
It's designed to
junior
be
higher,
that way,
yeah.
and you can't stop it. And so for parents who are listening, who think that they have all the rules and the limits and they have it all figured out, you might have it figured out for about a minute or a week, and it's all going to change, and it's all going to fail because you cannot manage a addictive activity. And this is what we're trying
That's
to do.
interesting.
You
That's
can't-
mind-blowing. Like once you start looking at it as a drug, like as
Yes.
if you would a drug, like you're not
Yes.
going to say, "Oh, you can have a little bit of meth, just a
That's
little
right.
bit."
That's right. And so we know that dopamine is the
Wow.
victim here. Or dopamine is the villain, not the
Right.
victim. And the dopamine build when a child is on a game or when they're on social media is all the same. And what I'm learning now from the physicians that I'm talking to is, with nicotine and cocaine, that's that high level of dopamine. Video games fit right in between there. It's higher than nicotine, a little bit less than cocaine, depending on how long you're playing. That's how high your dopamine gets. And so Adam explains that very well. And we have some really good videos of him talking about this in our Connect group and where he's explaining this to parents. And that's what our curriculum is doing now.
Is teaching the science
teaching
and
the
the
science.
chemicals that are released in your
Yes.
body. And so I
Yes.
have been aware of the dopamine in
Yeah.
relation to social media being compared
Same
to
thing.
drugs,
Same
right?
thing.
And we can talk about
Yeah.
social media in a minute,
Yeah.
but just
Yeah.
because we're on this topic of dopamine, for example. And
Yeah.
so here's the cool thing you guys need to know about is that Melanie and Evan, the Screen Strong, has this curriculum that's for kids. It's the kids' brains and screens, strong kids, strong families. And you guys, when I was looking through this at the last homeschool conference, I was literally thinking to myself, this is the perfect opportunity for a family during the summer months
Yeah.
to just integrate
Yeah.
into whatever education they're doing, whether they're homeschooling or they're doing private school or whatever their situation
Yeah.
is, right? To
Yeah.
be able to go through something with their kids so that their kids know the science,
Right.
their kids know the reson why mom and dad are saying, no,
And
we're
you're
not
the
going
bad
to do
guy
this.
all the time.
Exactly. Otherwise,
Right.
it's just, oh, why are you trying
Because
to take
I
away
said.
my fun? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
oh, you're that
Yeah.
mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
And no mom wants to be that. And there's
Yeah.
this constant parental peer pressure, I like to
Yeah.
call it.
Parental
right?
peer pressure. Yes.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And so there's this temptation to I've said no 30 times.
Yeah.
I'll just say yes this one time. Yes, you can go play video games
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
elders' kids.
Right,
Or
right,
whatever.
right.
Like that was a situation that we had, right?
Yeah.
And then over time I recognized, wow, these kids are playing not my kids,
Oh.
but their kids were playing all the time.
Yeah.
In fact,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
even more than what I was seeing, because in reality, what people expose in reality or
Yeah.
in real life,
Yeah.
it's very different in the home, right?
Oh,
And so
yes.
if they're willing
What's
to
really
be
happening.
so when you
Yeah.
walk into a restaurant and you see kids that are playing video games, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what's happening
Yeah.
in the
That-
home.
that's just a little
that's
tip
just
of
a
the ice.
taste
Yeah.
test
Yeah.
of what's really
Yeah.
happening at
Yeah.
home.
But let me show you this graphic right here.
This summer, Isaac and I have been encouraging parents to really focus on discipling their kids into having a rooted faith of their own. As your kids get older, you want them to be resolute in their beliefs and convictions, right? Well, one ministry that can be additive as you're discipling your children is Summit. You can give your teens an unshakable faith that will last a lifetime by participating in things like Summit Online, which gives students reasons to trust the biblical foundation you have laid for them. Students will wrestle through the hard questions in the culture and build an unshakable faith, all from the comfort of your living room. 3 of our kids are attending this summer, and I'm excited about the topics that they're covering, like abortion, identity, and authority of the Bible, and so much more. So register for Summit Online July 8th through 12th at summit.org/courageous, and you can get a special discount code using Courageous24, and check out their Bible curriculum for K through 12 when you're there. Learn more at summit.org/courageous.
This is one of my favorites for kids to understand what's happening when they're on a screen. This is dopamine, and we all need dopamine every single day.
Yeah.
But we need to stay in this green zone in the normal level of dopamine. And these are doing things like going outside and hanging out with your friends and reading a good book and hanging out with your family. But when you get up into this higher level of dopamine activities, which is like eating a chocolate bar. I mean, that's good, but you can't eat chocolate all day, right? So you've got drugs and alcohol and video games and social media up there. And if you're staying here, then what happens is you crash. So what goes up must come down. And this is why kids
Just
get
like sugar.
Exactly. It's exactly like that. And this is why there's such a mental health problem right now, because kids are depressed. And I remember with Adam, this is very sad, but when he was in 8th or 9th grade, he wrote a Christmas list of what he wanted for Christmas, and he had different video games on there every year. He put antidepressants on his Christmas list. What? That was so sad. And I didn't even know. He was in high school. He was in
15, 14.
Yeah, and I didn't even understand why. It's because gamers and kids on social media get very depressed because you get so used to that high dopamine, and then real life is just depressing.
It is depressing.
Right?
It's boring.
It's boring. So then with the younger boys, they came along. I'm like, sorry, guys. And so this one especially, Evan, he really wanted a smartphone. And he just knew every year that he was going to get one. And I'm like, nope, not till you're 18. Because I will never buy a smartphone for any of my children. I don't care if they're 30 years old. I am not buying a smartphone for anybody. But they had a flip phone, the equivalent.
So they had a safety device when they're out, since no one has landlines
But not till
anymore.
they were 15.
Right.
Not till they were
High school.
15.
Yep.
Yeah.
So he learned I'll let him tell you a little more about it. But I figured it out that according to science and according to many other good recommendations out there, that this is the way to go. And you know what? In our culture today, it just, the pendulum is coming back to center because everything went way out. And do you remember?
The pendulum.
Yes, and it has to swing back to center. And we have to do the bold thing and be courageous.
Yeah.
Because it's hard.
We do. Sometimes, I mean, most people are going to be the first ones in their communities saying no to video games or saying no to social media
and
or
it's,
saying
and
no
it's
to a
easy
smartphone.
for us parents to become bold, right? But it's harder for the kids. And this is where most parents start to hesitate and they start to give in, and they, their daughter does this beautiful PowerPoint presentation about why she needs social media, and we give in and we think, oh my goodness, look how smart she is and look how mature she is. But she's not mature.
No, and you have no idea how that's going to influence her.
And it's a terrible influence. And she is intelligent, but she's not mature. And we get very confused with that. And parents have blind spots. I have blind spots. I have blind spots with Adam.
Think that when we think our kids are more spiritually mature than other kids that are their age, it doesn't mean that it's okay to still to make. But
they're kids, and so the brain science tells us that their frontal cortex is not developed yet, and no matter there's really nothing you can do to speed that up.
Like, why would you want to? I mean, it's growing at the rate
at
that
the
God
rate
designed
it
it
should.
to grow.
But it takes 25 years for all those connections to be fully connected in the frontal cortex. That's why car insurance is so high for 16-year-old boys.
Wow.
So you think about, like, the secular world knows this, right? So we need to take those scientific and medical truths and just apply it to common sense for how we're raising our kids around this technology. And at Screen Strong, we don't believe that technology is all bad. It's not all bad. Screens are not all bad. We have family movie night and we watch sports and we do, but video games, social media, and pornography, those are the 3 most toxic uses of screens.
Yeah.
And that's what we're here to help parents unplug it And you can talk to Evan a minute about, does he have any friends? Does he, what did
Are
he
you
miss?
a loner, Evan?
Yes. No friends. No. I had, because didn't have video games or social media as a crutch, because that's what it is. It's when you don't want to go learn how to do something difficult, or you don't want to talk to people, so you pull out your phone or you go play the video game. Because I didn't have that, I had to talk to people. I had to look.
Imagine that.
I had to look people in the eye, and it's amazing. Like, you look, like back in the day, you see, doctors' waiting rooms, people would talk to each other. Nowadays, it's just all on their phones because, and I don't want to blame people, but it's easier to do that. It's so much easier to do that than to go through the awkwardness of meeting somebody new, or
Right.
just of caring and just and it's
part of your heart,
exactly, but it shows something about you that your social awareness is so much better when you don't have that, and you look around and you can read a room. Kids can't do that anymore. I have friends in college that can't do that say the wrong thing at the wrong times, or if there's a lull in the conversation, bam, they're on their phone. And what I have to do is I joke with them, and I'm like, give me your phone. No, we're not doing this. No, give me your phone. And they do it, and then they're like, oh, it's actually kind of fun. So now that I'm past the stage of in middle school wanting a smartphone because I wanted to be like everyone else, now that I'm past that and realize that not having one still allowed me to have friends and allowed me to get into other things like sports, music, and theater and all that helped me make more friends in the future. Right. Now that I can see that and have
real friends,
that you do real things with in real person, life. In real life. Yeah. Imagine that. And it's amazing because 30, 40 years ago, we were just like, oh, it's real life is just everything. But now that you have this virtual world that is competing with real life, now you have to really stop and think about it. But the way I look at it is, who are we to just change hundreds of years of parenting up? Yeah. Why all of a sudden do we think that it's okay to just kind of, it sounds harsh, but it is kind of neglect when you just hand your kid over to the iPad instead of saying, I'm going to take time as a parent to spend, and do an activity with my child. I don't want to deal with that, so I'm going to give it over to the screen.
100% right.
And it's sad, but we see that all too often nowadays. So, yeah.
But Evan, talk a minute about in middle school, because it was hard.
It was hard. We were the weird family. Yeah. We were. It was mom was the crazy mom, and we were the weird kids.
I love it. I want to high five you on that.
Exactly. But when you're doing anything like that, when you're going against the grain, you're probably doing it right. Christianity is against the grain of everything that our flesh tells us, but we know it's right. So the video game and social media issue is really not that different. And so, there are a couple years that were tough, but the only thing that I can remember my brother and I getting made fun of at school for was not having a phone. Last time I checked, that's not a character flaw, right? Right? They weren't making fun of my character. They weren't making fun of even the way I looked, the normal things that kids get made fun of. It was all just, oh, haha, you don't have a phone, you're Amish, you live under a rock. Those are the jokes. And it was like, okay, and me in middle school, I was like, oh my gosh.
I actually do.
Yeah, see, that's awesome. Yeah, we should have just gotten a cow just to
front yard,
just to show people. Yeah, and if we should have just gotten a cow in the front yard to be like, oh yeah, like we actually are Amish. No, but
I'm not Amish.
No, I know. But it was just that that was the only thing we really had against us. But we played sports, which other kids with phones played sports, and so then they were like, oh, I don't really care what's on my phone. I'm going to talk to this guy about sports. Or, when you go through like a tough practice with somebody, like that creates such a bond that video games and social media just don't. Or, being in the orchestra, playing the music, you have these common denominators when you do real things that they're not going to leave you out because you don't have a phone. I was always anytime my friends got together to go play baseball or something, they didn't leave me out because, oh, Evan and Andrew don't have phones. No, it was Evan and Andrew play baseball. Let's invite them.
Yeah,
so you learn who your real friends are. If there's a person who's not willing to talk to you because you don't have social media, you don't play video games, they're not after what you have to offer as a person. They're not your friend. And so you really do weed out kind of
the people that you want in fellowship also, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's kind of a test. You're not going to necessarily be hanging out with the people who are constantly on their phones, distracted. All of us know what a distraction phones are, whether it's an app, a game, or social media, right? Moms, dads struggle with this also. And so when there's distraction, but when you think about it as an actual distraction device, what is it really distracting kids from, or humans from? From noticing those familiar body language.
Oh yeah.
Things that
We
will
talk a
tell
lot
you
about that
someone
in here,
has
about the
something
communications
wrong,
skills.
right?
Yeah.
Like
Right.
if you're just distracted, if the moment you're done with your conversation, your face is glued to some kind of device, you're not noticing the body language, the tears,
That's
the
right. That's
the
exactly
smirk,
right.
the sad face,
if
the
your comment
depression.
really hurt someone, you can't tell how they're feeling if you don't see them.
Right,
And
exactly.
that's why there's so much rejection on social media. Kids are really mean.
Oh, that nonverbal communication.
And-
It's just lost.
Well,
It's all
because
lost.
anybody can do it anonymously
Oh,
these
yeah.
days, and
Oh,
they can
it's
just
so
say
easy.
the meanest thing and then leave and not have to deal with the repercussions of a conflict in an actual relationship with someone that they care about, right?
For
And
real.
so it's really dangerous.
Yeah.
In a
so
sense.
the problem is, though, in our culture is that parents don't know what to do.
Hey there, we just wanted to invite you to join us in the next Parenting Mentor program where we talk more about the heart of parenting in session 2. So take a listen to this next little clip and we hope you join us.
Steve and I realized that we were getting too comfortable with the world's vision of how to raise our children.
What Angie and Isaac have done in creating this is literally phenomenal.
This program provided awesome scripture-based teachings and just some really great practical applications.
This class has just really rocked my world.
It has given me a vision for not just the different things that we might focus on as parents who are trying to raise our kids biblically, like how our kids are behaving or what we're doing with discipline, but also the things of the heart.
We now have a game plan to how we want to raise our children. We have so many answers to the questions that have been in our mind.
It's not just these hypothetical situations, or it's not just this, here's what I think you should do. It's, let me show you where in scripture this is.
Do your legacy a favor and yourself a favor and just do it.
One of the best things that we've done this year, one of the best investments we've made this year, and I could not recommend it more.
We're no longer fearing dark days ahead, but we're so excited to raise lights, to be leaders for the next generation.
Right? I mean, I'm sure you talk to people all the time.
All the time. This
that
is one
are
of the biggest questions.
Struggling with this because they don't know what to do. Well, I want to say that they do know what to do. They don't know they know yet, but they need to follow their gut, right? And I think with parenting, and especially with moms, I like to say with parenting, there's the mom and the dad, there's like the catcher and the pitcher in baseball, right? So if the dad's the pitcher, he's pitching, right? But the mom's the catcher, and she can see the whole field, right? And he can't see it. So he's got to take a sign from her.
That's true.
Right?
Mom has different intel. How
That's
we
right.
call it.
You have different intel. And so usually, not
you
all
need
the
to be
time,
a team and communicate
right.
about the intel, which is,
And then there needs to be a trust between the player. It's not that the catcher is better than the pitcher is better than the catcher.
No, they just see
You've got to
difference.
have both. And so if the dad comes home and the mom says, hey, you know what? I've had it with the video game. It's over. Then dad needs to take that sign and say, good, we're going on a detox. And we have a detox that we can help you with. But we can just show you how to do this because, again, there's a lot of things on the market that are like how to detox your kids from sugar or how to detox whatever, even from screens. But I've been there. I've done it all wrong and then turned around and did the second experiment, right? And it worked.
Pretty much.
So, and that's what you do when you're a nurse. You try one thing. If that doesn't work, you try it again. And so we have the sort of intel on how to make it work because it's not hard, but there are certain things like there's like this cold turkey approach that's really important. That if you try to do a detox, but you're still allowing 2 hours of Fortnite on the weekend, it will not work. It will. I mean, there's certain things like this that you just have to trust us.
In moderation, which isn't really a thing. Going back to the drug thing, you don't need to moderate weed. You don't need to.
Or pornography. You don't say, okay, we can 2 hours of porn on the weekend. Okay.
It's ridiculous.
As long as we don't do it on Mondays, right?
No, that's so just lunacy. It's the same thing with video games, social media. It all does the same thing. So.
And I think parents know, but they want so badly to have a community around it, and that's what you're going to be really good at, and what I'm going to be good at is building this community to help parents
of
just
like-minded
feel
people who are willing to stand up and go countercultural.
That's right. Yeah. And you just can hit your wagon and be okay, got your back. And that's with Screen Strong. I think what we provide so much is that language and the words. And it's like, oh, Melanie, you just said exactly what I'm thinking. So now I can go explain it to my kids. I can explain it to my husband.
Well, and that's the big thing. I mean, within parenting, there's generational stigmas to each generation regarding parenting, right? So there's the do as I say, not as I do generation, the right. Is that why? Because I said so generation.
Yeah.
But we have to be the parents that are teaching our kids the why, so that
That's
it
right.
develops a conviction within them, so that they want to do
Yes.
it when they're launched, right? Because if you're just parenting to your kids versus equipping them up,
That's right.
the legacy gets
That's
broken
right.
down
And
right
that's
there.
very clearly
Yes.
what happened in our home with the 3 children that were raised, our younger
Mm-hmm.
3. They didn't go out and go crazy when they were able to have social media. And you can talk about that.
I have
how has the transition
zero
been?
desire.
Zero
no
desire.
desire to get on social media. Like I make plenty of friends without it. I don't miss out on anything because of it. And we don't. There's this huge myth out there that our kids need to learn how to use social media. If these social media companies wanted to make money, they wouldn't make it difficult for people to learn. They don't make it difficult for people to learn because they want to make money. So therefore, why do we need to have our kids learn social media when Caveman Og could pick it up? You know what I'm saying? Like that's it's
It
just
is
like
pretty
as an example.
intuitive, that's
It's very,
true.
it's very intuitive as human beings.
4-year-old can do it.
At 4
But what you do need to train your children in is self-discipline,
That's
right?
right,
Because
exactly,
if they're
yeah.
working for a company where part of their marketing job is that they have to manage
Mm-hmm.
something, then
Right.
they need to have self-discipline so
Right.
that they don't
Right.
get sucked in and then
But
get
the
addicted,
If they have
right?
basic discipline in every other aspect of their life growing up without
Right.
social media, they're
be a
still going to
disciplined
apply
person.
that. They're just
Yeah.
a disciplined person overall.
Yeah.
So then when something like social media as a tool, not as a toy, gets, put in their, hands as a responsibility as a working
Yes.
adult, then they can say, then they can confidently know that they're not going to go crazy on it.
You just
So,
said a
yeah.
key phrase. Use social media as a tool,
Tool.
Yeah,
not
not
a
a toy. We say that all the time. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because kids are going to use it as a toy.
Well, it's part of our world. It's
Right,
not
exactly.
going anywhere,
Right,
right?
right,
You know,
right.
I remember when we had a branding expert come in with and do an audit
Yeah.
of our business. He's like,
Mhm.
if you're not on social media,
Yeah.
you're shooting yourself in the
Yeah.
foot, right?
Mhm. Right.
And
It
so
is a good
there's a
tool.
necessary
Yeah.
evil about it in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Of like,
Yeah.
okay, well, it is free marketing,
Yeah.
but it's a tool. It's not
Right.
something that you sit and you scroll and you waste
No.
hours on. And
Yeah.
But
you
let's
know what I
talk
mean?
about willpower just for a second, because
Yeah.
this is a big question with parents, because they
Yeah.
think, okay, well, they've got to have it now under my roof. So
I've
I
thought
can,
that. I'll
so
be
I-
honest.
Right.
Yeah.
So I can teach them how to do this.
Yeah.
And what we know from, if we want to just look at science, because there's so many opinions out there. So
Yes.
let's go back to the foundation a minute of the human brain, and how do we deal with addictive, or how do we deal with temptation in regular life?
We don't expose our children
That-
to the temptation of sin.
That's
Right.
right.
When they're like, no one
That's
does
right.
that to train them.
Well,
Right.
and if you look at all the different habit books that are out there, they will also tell you the science around building willpower is about staying as far away from the temptation as you can, right? So if you are having struggles with coffees, right, or donuts, I have a problem with donuts because I love Krispy Kreme donuts. So if you have a problem with that, if I have a problem with that, then what the way I handle it is I don't go buy a dozen donuts and put them on the kitchen counter and then try not to eat them.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That is not how you deal with
Yes.
things that you don't want to do,
Yes.
right? So for our kids, the way that we deal with technology that we know is bad for them, especially during this stage of development, these windows of time where they have to do other things and learn and do other things, and this is going to drag them down. There will be a time. You got a phone probably when you were an
Yep.
adult. I didn't even get a phone until I had a few kids, right?
I think that I was a few years into having kids.
Yeah,
at least.
And so
Uh-huh.
you weren't as tempted by it as
No.
you would have been.
Oh, I talk about this all the time
If-
with moms because social media didn't even exist until a decade into
Yeah.
my
That's
parenting.
right.
So it was
Exactly.
like
That's right.
I know what it can look like before having it even existed.
And as a mom,
and so you have that standard.
or anyone over 25, right? You use it different than a 15-year-old. So
Totally.
that's the thing. And we know that willpower has a very short shelf life. That's the other problem. And this is across the board with adults as well as whatever. It has a very short. So think about it like a gallon of milk. It's going to go sour pretty quick, right?
Yeah.
So maybe your child can have willpower and not look at something on their phone, for 10 minutes. But an hour from now, it's going to be really hard. And so we have to keep that temptation out of the way, just like I don't take a certain route to the grocery store that I know I pass the Krispy Kreme. I go the other way. Because even just passing it, if that flashing little hot donut sign is on, it is so hard. So why would I put myself in that position? And I'm an adult. So for our kids, it's even that much harder. So the way that we train kids to use social media the right way when they're older is they don't use it when they're young. And it changes their palate.
Well, and
right?
one of the best things is to not even have games on your phone. Like
Oh, of
for
course.
us, we have smartphones because we use them for business and it's easier,
but
right?
even on your smartphone.
But I
if
don't
you
have
took-
games on my phone.
No.
So like my
Right.
kids don't ask me to
They
play
don't want
games
you- they
on
don't
my
want your phone. No.
They don't want it because
Yeah.
there's nothing
Yeah.
fun on it.
Exactly.
Actually.
And your goal
Yeah.
is
Well, fun. There's fun stuff for
There's
fun adult
still-
stuff.
Yes.
Not for kids.
But your goal is to get through that 48 months of high school, those high school years.
Yeah.
If you can get through just 48 months of
I love how you put
introducing-
that. It's 48
just 48
months.
Can we
Yeah.
not do
Yeah.
something for 48 months? That's how I looked at it with them. You can play games the rest of your life. You can be on social media the rest of your life.
When you're an
But
adult, you have your own, when
Yeah.
you're launched, yes.
But you're mine for this 48
Right,
months.
because
And
we're
I'm-
held accountable as parents.
Yes.
That's the thing
Yes.
is a lot of parents are not choosing to fight this battle, right?
Right.
But one of
Right.
the things we have to realize is that there's this addiction element, and in the same way that we wouldn't allow our kids to eat too much sugar or
That's
too many
right.
donuts, or
Right.
you know, Isaac and I were talking earlier today about this topic, and he said to me something that was really profound. He said, when a mom sees her kid is physically injured,
Yes.
like on the outside, what do?
Yeah.
We immediately go to tend to the wound.
Yeah.
We've got all of our tools, whether it's
Yeah.
hydrogen peroxide, salve,
Yeah.
Band-Aids, whatever
Right.
we need, right? But this is a problem that you can't necessarily see outwardly in the same kind of
Yeah.
way, but there are probably some physiological
Oh, yes,
symptoms.
there
so
are.
I really think it would be beneficial for parents to hear what some of those symptoms are so that they can evaluate, assess. Because
Right.
a lot of people listening, I'm sure they've let their kids play games, whether
Yeah.
it was on their smartphone or a video
Yeah.
game device, or
Well,
maybe they
we,
have teenagers
um,
on social media.
I look at it like an allergy. So again, I'm a nurse. I bring in my nursing
I love
background. And so when they were little and we decided to go game free and we decided that we weren't going to have phones and we would have a new neighbor perhaps move in, I would go tell the mom, my kids are allergic to video games and to porn. So can they play outside? They can't go inside and play. And we would kind of laugh about it. But in a way, it is like an allergy because
I
they
love
have
how
a
you
reaction.
put that. You guys can adopt that.
Yeah.
Those of you who are listening, my kids are
Absolutely.
allergic to video games
Yeah.
and porn. I love that.
And I would say, I failed, right, as the game cop mom. I did a terrible job. So my kids are not I am not gonna put them, you know what? Think about this. If your child has a peanut allergy, think of the extent that you go to whenever
protect
them. When they go to
100%.
school, and schools have all these rules. If there's a child with a peanut allergy, no one in the class can even bring a peanut butter sandwich, right? So, do we care more about about peanuts than we do about what's
Their
happening in their
souls.
brain and their souls?
I mean, really, because
right.
when you talk about porn,
Right.
there's
We know with pornography, medically speaking, what happens when a child sees a graphic image, that image is filed in their brain like a little memory
you
chip.
can't unsee it.
It is never going away. And we explain that in this book. And the reason why, let me back up and say, the reason why we spent so much energy on this, about 5 years of research and time in the field and interviews
Yes.
and beta testing all went into this. And the reason why is because this was our most requested piece from parents. They wanted us to create something that they could share with their kids
To teach
so
them
they
the
could
why.
understand the
Yes.
why. And when a child understands the brain damage that is occurring when they're off on the internet doing things they shouldn't be doing, they'll think twice. They still need a coach, right? They still need a
They
parent.
still need a parent.
And our
Because
parents
kids need parents.
Oh,
That's why
imagine
God
that.
gave them
Imagine
to
that.
them. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And but once they understand the why, it's super helpful for the parent coach. And we just tell parents all the time to take your parenting hat off. No
Yeah.
offense to your brand.
no.
I'm just kidding. And to put your coach's hat on because this is like a battle.
Well, that really,
And-
especially as your kids are getting older too.
Yeah.
And they're starting
You've got to
to
coach
'cause,
them.
I mean, yes,
Yeah.
there are parents who are handing a smartphone to their 18-month-old and 2-month-old to play a little game
Right.
at a restaurant. That
Right.
is true. And then
Right.
iPad.
Right. And that's
iPads
a
are
gateway
problem.
to a big problem.
That's creating habits.
That's right.
Also,
That's exactly right.
And
Yeah.
a competition in
Yeah.
entertaining them. And there's just I could go on a soapbox, as
Yeah.
I'm sure you could.
Yeah.
But when your kids start getting older, you need to start shifting in how you're parenting to where
That's
you're
right.
developing a mentor coaching kind of
That's right.
relationship
Exactly.
anyway. And
Exactly.
so this is just part of that when you're getting to the crux of, do I get my kid a phone
Right.
or not?
Right.
Or what kind do I give them?
Yeah.
Or what are they exposed to on a computer? What are the computer rules?
Yeah.
Right? Like
Right.
having, for us, we try to have them out in the open so there's accountability
Yeah.
and things like that.
Yeah, we
But
have a lot of tips around all that.
That's
and
awesome.
we have some phone recommendations on our website for basic phones. Never a smartphone, never a phone that has internet
Yeah.
connection and a data plan. They don't need it. And quite frankly, I really hesitated we pushed it off as long as I could, even until they were 15, because I wanted them to learn how to do life without a phone. I wanted them on their bike to go get their hair cut, to go to the grocery store, to ride their longboard to their friend's house.
To have a normal childhood.
And I didn't want to track them, even though my mom, Jean, wanted to track them, because it's very...
No, but I think that there is an element of control, though, that our generation
it's very
of parenting...
overprotective. Yeah.
It is. It's too overprotective in that regards of where we're not growing up in trusting
we're not
God
letting go
with our
of our
children
kids.
and then
Right.
letting go, and then we have this huge failure to launch issue that's
That's
happening
right.
across
Yeah.
the country.
That's right.
And it's not just the
Yeah.
kids' problem, it's
Yeah.
also because the parents have been cultivating that problem.
Yeah.
They're actually the problem.
Yeah, because our kids got
Yeah.
stuck in their immaturity, and they were never they were never allowed to make
grow up.
mistakes and grow up and
Yeah,
be
and fail,
awkward and fail and learn how when
Yeah.
you're lost, how do I?
Yeah.
They didn't even have a GPS when they were driving because I wanted them to learn
We
to
had
read
a paper map.
a map.
Yeah.
So talk about that a second.
I mean,
I love that. You
yeah,
have
I
to
would-
talk about that.
I would be on the way to a friend's house, and I would have to use a map and follow. We had a big map of. We live in Charlotte, and we had a big map of like the Charlotte area. And there were a couple times where, my friend's house was out of off the map, and I didn't realize that. So I kind of had to figure some stuff out like that. And then it got to a point where I was like, I have no idea where I am. So I pulled the car over and I called Mom, and I was like, Mom, get me to whatever. And she just directed me. And so it's like, it's not the end of the world.
happened one
So yeah,
time.
that happened one time.
Though, that's so beautiful about that scenario is that you called Mom to get cross points, and that initiated you learning from your. I mean, that's an
Yeah.
element of like having that teachable
You didn't Google it.
relationship with your mom, and that is something that we talk about on a regular basis, even just within relationships within the body of Christ or within families and communities. There's this, because of smartphones and technology, when people want something to learn how to do something, they don't go to the grandma or the older mom, or they don't
That's
go to the
right.
Titus 2. They go and Google it.
I know.
And then
so
there's a missing point that happens relationally that God wants us to have in our relationships with other people.
100%. Yeah.
So you just lost
Yeah.
your coach.
Yeah.
You just lost
Exactly.
your coach. And as for a coach, your team just went to another team.
Not only did you lose a coach, but there's a part of a relationship with a child that you lost.
Oh, yeah.
That God wants to be there, which is that teacher
Oh yeah.
student relationship, right? Because we're supposed to be, we're the God-given authorities that God
right.
places in our kids' lives for a reason, right? And so to miss out on those opportunities, that's
But
huge.
we are taking it away. We are robbing our kids of all these abilities to learn. And it's not that we're going back in time. We're actually ahead of our time over here at Screen Strong, because we're teaching kids real life skills. And one year I remember giving y'all Atlas for Christmas, and that was like their favorite gift.
I would just free read it when I was bored. Like if I was ever bored, I would get out the atlas and I would just look at the maps of the different
Of
states,
all the different
because it is
states.
so interesting. There's so I don't know.
Yeah.
It's called me boring, but
No.
but it was like it was fun. It was something to do, and I learned from that. I learned
it's
where
geography.
things were. It's important. Nobody knows geography anymore.
Right.
You cannot. I can. I'll talk with some of my friends about just different road names or something, or places that
They have no idea what
they
you're
have
talking
no idea what
about.
I'm talking about, and they've lived in Charlotte as long as I have, and they have zero clue. And I'm
so
like,
what's going to happen if we lose
Unbelievable.
electricity? Evan's
Exactly.
going to be going and picking people up and
No,
saving the
seriously,
day
they're-
because
yeah,
he's
they're gonna
gonna
give me
be
a
the only
call.
one that knows.
I'm gonna be the only one who knows how to get around, because everyone just it's 5 minutes down the road. Let me just put it in Google Maps. So I cannot think. How can I not think?
Yeah.
But when when you have maps,
Right.
you have to. It's critical thinking, because you look. Okay, here's where I want to go. Here's where I am. There's multiple ways to get it. What do I know about the
Yes.
area? How to get there? If I get lost, what roads can I take? That's all gone. That's all lost.
And it's a really good
Yeah.
analogy for life
Yeah.
in general, because without having Google and all the assistants there to help you, then you learn how to map your life a little bit differently, because
true.
when you are not constantly Googling the thought that comes into your head, which is a really bad idea most of the time, because kids will think of something, or they'll hear a word, or and then they start going down this whole rabbit trail. It's a real good analogy of just using an analog map in life as well as on the road, and
It's the
not
same
having
thing with having books.
yes
today.
yes
Versus
that's a whole
it-
other thing I love
yes.
talking about.
Build your
the
family library.
science.
It's
Yeah,
one of
and
the best things you can invest in.
yeah, and the science around reading
Yes.
paper versus a screen, and that deep thinking, and
Well, and I was just even thinking about how when you were sharing that story of using critical thinking in that moment, you were creating neurological connections in
That's
that
right.
moment. And so every time someone is using a GPS, they're
Yeah.
actually not
Yeah.
creating
No,
the
no.
neurological connections
like
that they
you-
could have used. So
Yeah.
it's a missed opportunity
Oh,
again.
totally.
Just like you
So
and
there's
I
tons
have
of those.
forgotten all the phone numbers of our best friends, right? Because
Yeah,
we just
I know
put
that's true.
Yeah, because
I
you
used
don't
to have a
use
lot
it.
of phone numbers memorized. Now I only
You
have
lose
like 5.
it.
Yeah,
right.
it's true.
And so it's kind of scary. So technology is great. We love technology. That's not the point. The point is right now, during the stage of the most sensitive time of development, we've got to keep it as analog as possible. They will know how to use technology. Like Evan said a minute ago, that's their business plan. They've got to make it as easy as possible. So that was what I got tripped on. Personally with Adam, I thought he had to have this computer because he was learning all the stuff about
So really,
coding
schools, co-ops,
Yeah.
homeschool parents,
Yeah.
we all need to have a different perspective on
Yes.
these
Yes.
tools,
Yes.
devices.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know,
They're
it's kind
toxic
of like when
and
you're
they're
reading
hot. I mean-
the Bible. I mean, one of the things that we're constantly telling parents is stop using your phone
Yes.
for the Bible because your kids don't
Yes.
know if you're on social media or what
Right,
you're on.
right.
But
It
when you
looks
have
like-
the Bible open, there is no question what
Of
mom
what
is
you're doing.
doing.
Oh, 100%.
You're reading the
Right,
Bible.
right.
Totally.
And so, like when you see churches, you know, and everybody's got their
Yeah.
phones
Screens, yeah.
versus the Bible. Oh, it just kills us.
That drives
because
me crazy.
It's not
Yeah.
sorry, it's not the Word of God.
Right.
We're not going
Yeah.
to. That's
You're
a
getting
counterfeit,
pop-ups
actually.
on Amazon.
You're
and
getting
you're
ads,
reading it
yeah.
and just trusting that it's all accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually,
Yeah.
we
Who
don't
knows?
know.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
the actual physical
Right.
Bible in your
Right.
hands.
Write
That's
in
the
it
only
and stuff.
trusted
You
thing
can
in my
Yeah.
mind.
100%.
There's so
Yeah.
much about learning that is been documented and so well researched on paper versus screens. It's not that screens are all bad. You can learn certain things, but screens are for skimming. They are not for deep thinking. And so
They
this
even
is
hurt your eyes.
yes, and we have a whole section in here on
Yes.
all the physical problems. And
I think I need one of those.
so yeah, you will love this. And so I tell parents, we have a parent course and we have a whole package with a curriculum, with a parent course and the student course and the detox and everything. But this is my favorite thing that we include in the bundle.
Okay.
And parents, you know this. If you want to get a refresher on world history, for example, read a 5th grade world history book, and you will learn a lot. And so a lot of parents are learning so much from this because it goes through in very simple language, explaining the science, the addiction science, the how to get off, your screens,
Got
how
it.
to pull away. Then we have the mental and the physical and emotional, all the effects. And it's in language that kids can really understand. And the graphics, I don't want to do a commercial, but let me tell you, these
No, it's
graphics
great.
are so pretty. And so I'm just saying,
They'll keep kids' attention,
yes. And
which
so,
is, I mean, I hate to say it, but you're in
That's
a
what we're
competition
trying to do,
with
right?
technology.
For sure.
and so
Yeah.
for the summer, go through this is a perfect thing to do this summer.
I mean,
'cause it's
imagine if
really
parents
fun.
could just even choose 12 weeks.
Yeah.
Or 8
Yeah,
weeks
8
where
weeks.
they do an
Yeah.
experiment of no
Right,
screens and they
right.
do
And
this
they do
curriculum. How,
Yeah.
Like just do an experiment, parents,
And what-
see
and what you fill
you
your life
see
with.
different
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
the end of 8 weeks.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people would
Yeah.
really be surprised as to how the attitude problems,
Yeah.
the issues in relationships between siblings and even between
right.
them and their kids
Right.
could all dissolve.
Right.
Maybe not all completely, but
Oh,
you start
see a
you
big
start
difference.
seeing it because
Yeah.
it really comes down to hearts want to be known and people
That's right.
want to be known like their minds,
right.
right? And
They
we
want
all
you
want
to
to be
care about
valued.
them.
People to
Yeah.
know our thoughts, just
Yeah.
as like that's why we say we want to be knowing God and making Him known, right? Because He designed us to be known and to know Him. And when you're on screens, you're not really fully
No.
knowing people. And so when you eliminate that as a distraction in your summer, you're really opening up an opportunity to get to know your kids better.
And after you do the detox, the first thing we hear across the board, even prompted, the testimonies we get back always is, my kids are talking to me more.
Yeah,
That's the first
that's
thing.
huge.
I know. Isn't that awesome?
It
Because
is awesome.
Screens just kind of keep us out of conversation
Yeah.
with our kids. And
Well, that's awesome. Can
So-
you tell our audience
Yeah.
where the best places are to find you and to find out about this curriculum?
so we have a website designed specifically for Kids Brains and Screens. So that's kidsbrainsandscreens.com. But the Screen Strong website is probably the best place to start. That has the community group because we really believe in education and community. You
Yeah.
got to have both.
Yep.
And a lot of people have one or the other. But with this issue, you've got to have both. You've got to have the education. So that's Okay.
Okay.
And then we have our Be Screen Strong Instagram and the Screen Strong Families podcast, where we bring on physicians. And we have about 200 podcasts loaded in there right now that you can go back and find topics that you're interested in and listen to a doctor talk about video game violence. So we have a lot of different
awesome
topics.
Lots of resources.
So a big library for that.
That's great.
So that's where to start.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me today on the podcast.
Thank you so much. Let's do it again.
That sounds good. All right, guys. See you next time.